Hello, Mr. Perry. You may be wondering, what is this? Why are you sending me two files? Is this a virus? It is a virus.
The truth is that I actually finished this assignment, like, the first day you assigned it. But, like, even though it would be funny to turn it in on the first day, it would be even funnier if I did this instead. So in my efforts to make this video, less than an hour long, it's taken me, like, 10 hours. That's what I call planning. Anyways, aubergine, advance. Starting off, I made 5 or so rockets and picked the one that was least likely to kill all of my crew in a horrible and fiery accident. The pilot of this beautiful vessel will be Jebediah Kerman, the best and brightest Kerbal pilot there is. Along with Jebediah Kerman, there's also Bob Kerman to do science and Bill Kerman to fix what the other two break. I decided to launch at night so there'd be a lower risk of crashing into the sun. The launch was fairly regular, with the first stage bringing them most of the way into the upper atmosphere, and there was a clean separation between the first and second stages. Once the second stage flamed out, the third stage brought them to a complete circular orbit. The engine that got them to orbit is a nuclear engine. These have two downsides, really. The first one being it sprinkles some nice uranium dust to make sure that everyone has a nice coating of 235 in their lungs. The second, more important downside is that it takes ages to do anything with it with an absolutely atrocious thrust-to-weight ratio. The reason that I use it is because it's the second most efficient engine in the entire game, with the first being the ion engine, which is much slower and sadly does not give them radiation poisoning. But also, I would rather dive bomb from the Carmen line than utilize a ion engine. So nukes it is. Remember how I mentioned how low the thrust-to-weight ratio on the nuclear engine is? Because of that, I have to split a only 1 kilometer per second burn into two smaller burns, one of 600 and one of 400. The first burn is meant to get them to a relatively higher orbit than before, and the second one is to escape and encounter Duna. After around a year of waiting, the crew make a small correction burn to make sure that their periapsis is as close, but not directly touching the atmosphere so they don't turn into a fine red mist. Once at Duna, I prayed to the Ike gods that Ike would not smite me down in my orbit. Thankfully, he did not. After getting to a relatively high orbit, I burned to get below the atmosphere, and I decoupled my Mars descent and ascent vehicle. From there, Jebediah was able to aerobrake down to the surface, use his parachutes to slow down the craft, and do some small engine burning to come to a stable landing. After emerging from his capsule, Jebediah Kerman claimed the land of Duna for the United States of Microsoft Paint. Upon re-entering his pod, he signaled to the orbital transfer vehicle to lower its orbit around Duna. It was around when the true margins of the mission was revealed, after realizing that over 6 Ks of extra Delta V was packed in. After firing off his engine, Jebediah Kerman got just above the Kármán line and decided to enter a stable orbit. After 34 days in orbit, he was able to rendezvous with the mothership. After another year or so, the craft was in a transfer window to Kerbin, so they burned their engines into a encounter with the planet. And after a couple, months, they did a correction burn. Burned the nuclear engines a bit once they got to Kerbin, to lessen the G-forces that they will be experiencing on the way down, but it didn't really do much in the end besides waste my incredible excess of fuel. After experiencing G-forces that will make a fighter pilot pass out quicker than a newborn child, the crew managed to pull the parachutes and make sure that there was no horrible and fiery accident when they hit the ground. After getting to a relatively slow pace, Jebediah Kermit decided it'd be a good idea if he were to practice his parachute tricks. He sadly hit the ground, cracked his neck, and died. The other two lived, though. That's cool.